to shift the topic over to the topic at hand, which is hackback or long-term investigations. Blake, what are your thoughts, experiences on any of those things? Tag, you're it.
Cool, yeah. So I know that, for a while people have been talking about hacking back or, ways to do more interesting things in the space when it's necessary or when you're chartered to do so. I think it really, so for me, in my personal experience at the organization that I work at, clearly hacking back for a financial institution is not within our charter, not something that we are privy to do, and has serious legal implications. But with that, I believe and have come up with this idea that instead of hacking back, what about active defense technologies? And what I mean by active defense is, let's take a credential stuffing attack, for example. Blocking IPs doesn't work. It works to a degree, but depending on your rate limiting policies and a number of other components to your security architecture, those might go out the window. And so from an active defense perspective, let's say there's a bit of crimeware out there that is leveraging a super old version of a particular browser or whatever it is, let's say. Well, what happens if I load a bit of JavaScript into that browser, and unfortunately, that browser is just super out of date, and man, it can't handle the way this JavaScript is calling, itself or whatever it might be, and maybe that creates max CPU utilization on the endpoint. Now, any other user, right, in the environment, or any other user that might be interacting with the platform, if they're running an up-to-date version, within the past 15 or 20 versions, the JavaScript that's loaded into the browser is not going to do anything to them. It will be just like any normal JavaScript. It won't create any more overhead. But bits of crimeware that's out there specifically use typically older bits of software. And so with that, I don't know, what if we were just to happen to arbitrarily load this into every single user session? And it's not my fault if your browser can't handle it, right? And so I think being a little bit more creative in that way is something that the industry needs to do. And I think that that's something that our organization in particular is interested in pursuing a little bit more. We've got some research initiatives around this. But as far as hacking back, if you're a part of a team that is chartered to do so, and you have the legal authority to do so, then I think that is definitely a tool within your toolbox that should be utilized, especially in high risk scenarios that require quick turnaround or require visibility that would otherwise not be you would not be able to get. And so I'm of the opinion that it is something that needs to be used sparingly, that needs to have multiple points of vetting and validation and support from whoever is authorizing this activity. I think that in many cases the concern about hacking back is that, well, if you do it in this scenario, then what's the threshold to allow that sort of activity? And I think that that is the discussion that needs to be had, more than sort of, oh, well, is hacking back right or wrong? Right? Well, it depends. And I think that in many cases, a lot of people are very concerned that if you do allow that sort of capability to happen, are the right checks and balances in place to ensure that it's not being abused?
Yeah, no, I think those are good words. Brian, what are some of your thoughts on this? Because this even came up last week with a client.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I thought this was a done and over thing, and then I was up at the Columbia University was it Law and Cyber Warfare Conference, and they had a panel of military attorneys on, and they had brought up that this Representative Tom Graves from Georgia had introduced this bill again, and basically they were blasting it, going, this is a terrible idea. There's government military organizations that have the mandate and the charter for this. It's done under controlled, supervised programs. If we just have everybody that thinks they've identified the bad guy doing this, we're just going to have utter chaos. Which is where I tend to be with that too. Is Unfortunately, I guess for the nature of what we do, at the company is, I see a lot of organizations that, I would not, under any circumstances, want to see them hacking back at anybody, because they they don't they don't have a great understanding of their own network. They certainly don't have understanding what's going on in other people's, and attribution and things like that. Just not something they're capable of doing. And if you put a loaded gun in their hands, who knows where they're pointing that thing at.